Stellenbosch University's Center for Social Justice is set to host scholars, government and business leaders for the 4th Annual International Conference on Social Justice and the 5th Annual Social Justice Summit. Experts will make presentations on key issues such as corruption in post-apartheid South Africa, land equity, food security, entrepreneurship, and much more. And for more on the gathering, we're joined by Professor Thuli Madonsela, who is the head of the Center for Social Justice. Good afternoon to you, Professor Madonsela, and thank you so much for your time. Just looking at South Africa being synonymous with the most unequal society in the world, and what social justice has been denied since post-apartheid or pre-democracy. Where would you say we are in terms of correcting that gap in society? Good afternoon, Professor. I'm not sure if you're able to hear me. And please unmute your device.
I can hear you.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. I can hear you now. I'm just saying that we've become synonymous. It's almost, given that South Africa is the most unequal society in the world. And that it doesn't seem to have been addressed as such. The gaps are just widening between the haves and have-nots.
Greetings, Cindy. Thank you for the privilege, and greetings to viewers. You are right that we are not where we could have been had we been more intentional about the social justice commitment in the Constitution. If we understand that social justice is simply equal enjoyment of all rights and freedoms by all, and it's not a case of a few crumbs being thrown to others whilst others enjoy the lion's share of rights. But I do think that things are better. Yes, statistically, things are not as they could be, and inequality has widened, poverty has widened. But there's so much more commitment today, Cindy, towards advancing social justice. For example, before 1994, and even before the 1993 Constitution, people wouldn't even just accept the idea that all human beings are equal and deserve equal treatment. So we're in a better place now, but we need to do better. And that's why this conference and the Musa Plan for Social Justice seek to galvanize everyone and all resources to accelerate progress on equality and ending poverty.
And Prof, social justice in itself talks about everyone's right who deserves equal or equality when it comes not only to the economic wealth, opportunities, safety and security, political, social, and social orientation. We do have those choices, but it's not necessarily that everyone has the personal agency, Professor, based on, again, the lack of proper quality education and other circumstances in society. So what is the summit going to, or how is it going to address some of the social ills that are still prevalent in society?
The summit seeks to galvanize everyone or mobilize everyone to plug those gaps. And you are right that whilst the Constitution gives everyone the right to equal enjoyment of all the rights and freedoms that it enshrines, the reality is that we started this journey in 1993 when the interim Constitution was adopted as unequals. And it was not because some were unfortunate. It was because successive governments of South Africa manufactured inequality. So on top of that inequality, there were also culturally manufactured forms of inequality, and an intersection of those inequalities and those inequalities that were manufactured by the state has made the situation worse. And a lot of initiatives have been taken, but they're not enough. So the conference focuses not on what has government done wrong or failed to do. We are focusing on what has business done right, what has civil society done right, How do we connect those lights and scale them? And I'm not standing here suggesting business has not done things wrong. No, civil society committed any wrongs. At this stage, we just want to recognize the light within us, connect those lights, and scale the big light that comes together when business, society, and to some extent the state act together. And we think, as Ethiopians say, when spider webs unite, they can tie up a lion. And our lion is extreme poverty and systemic structural inequality. And we think that together, with business playing a greater role and civil society playing a greater role, we can make a difference in time to make a huge impact on the Sustainable Development Goals.
And of course, whether the targets will be reached or not, Professor Madonsela, is, I suppose, a debate for another day when it comes to the Sustainable Development Goals of reducing poverty and also eradicating other social ills. I want to look at the preamble of the Constitution that speaks of redressing the issues or the injustices of the past, and whether this particular conference would look at it, because that in itself is the building blocks of why we have this unequal society if we're not redressing the injustices of the past, Prof?
Oh, absolutely. That is the starting point, and that's where we think we have gone wrong with intentionality. We have addressed inequality here and there, but we have not looked at the Constitution, that it talks about the fact that we adopt it in order to heal the divisions of the past and establish a new society that is based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental rights. And that's the entirety of the society. The society is a complex system, and you can't address inequality or poverty in one place and hope that will impact on everything. You've got to hit poverty through education, through health, through food security, through climate change pushback, and everything. And when all of these things come together, we will see magic. And we know that business and society have been doing amazing things. I've just come back from One Young World, where many young people who are changing the world and fixing the pressing challenges of society are brought together. But who brings them there? Who pays for them to come to One Young World conferences? It's business and big foundations. And therefore, business are doing great things. But it's a question of how do we become more intentional, grounded on the preamble to the Constitution? And how do we start by accepting that we're unequal? And the bulk of that inequality here in South Africa was manufactured by government. And in the rest of the world, it may have been manufactured by government or by cultural practices. But regardless of who manufactured the inequality, we have the power within and between us to eradicate inequality and poverty.
And your other agenda points during the International Conference and Summit, Professor Madonsela, is also around corruption, land equity, and many others. But I just want to touch on corruption and your view of what had transpired since the State of Capture report, the establishment of the Zondo Commission, the outcomes thereof, people that have been implicated, and maybe the wheels of justice do move slowly. But in your view, in your observation, do you think that corruption is being addressed as seriously as it should be?
That's true. Justice is moving slowly to address the injustices that were pointed out in the State Capture report. And I'm calling it injustice because corruption is an injustice. And state capture is an egregious injustice where a spider web of corruption eats at the soul of the state and at the soul of democracy. And something is happening. It's happening slowly. But I think the conference can then galvanize social accountability from society to say, how do we help to move this needle faster than it has been moving? Because alone government cannot do much. In fact, none of the systemic problems in society can be solved by one sector. We need to pull together like spider webs to solve these problems. And corrupt people know that. They operate like spider webs. So we should do the same thing, operate like a spider web. And hopefully this conference will emerge with a huge spider web that looks at implementing the Musa Plan for Social Justice and dealing with all forms of social injustice that are within our power to address.
We're going to leave it at that analogy, Professor Thuli Madonsela. Really appreciate your time. Professor Thuli Madonsela is the head of the Center for Social Justice at the University of Stellenbosch.